morning, Nicholas. How you doing?
Good morning. Great to have you here at Foundation's headquarters,
World headquarters.
world headquarters.
Why the name Foundation? It's an interesting name for any company, no less a cigar company.
You want to hear the real story?
I would love to.
You know, for me, the word foundation has always had a great significance. Actually, I listen to a lot of reggae music, if you know, and the word foundation actually comes up a lot. Because
Why? I'm not that
well,
familiar
just
with
in order to have a
form.
really strong just foundation in life, you know, it's always about really just building yourself as the temple, right?
Okay.
Just being a good person, and the foundation of that was always love amongst you know, the reggae community. So
Okay.
it was just sort of a word that I always liked. And then a good friend of mine in
So it
Italy.
defines a spiritual way to live your life?
Correct.
A well-centered, well-balanced,
That's correct.
holistic?
Yeah, yeah. I have this is
Sounded-
actually the
that's
first
good.
time I'm talking about it in that light. But yeah, that's really the core of it. Not only is the word just a strong word in itself, you know, when you're thinking of words that people can remember. You know, the word foundation is a word that everybody can pronounce easily and recognize. So as time was going on, and I decided to really venture out on my own back in 2015, a good friend of mine from Italy named Massimo Musico, who was a pipe maker. I used to live in Italy back in 2000. Right by the Trevi Fountain is this beautiful pipe shop.
Right.
Giorgio Musico started the shop along with a gentleman named Fritz Becker, famous pipe maker in Europe. And I used to spend all my days at this pipe shop. It was pretty much in the center of the, you know, Trevi Fountain is where
Right
all the
there,
tourists
the
are.
epicenter.
But in the shop on a daily basis was the businessmen of Rome, the politicians of Rome, the locals that lived in Rome. And I used to go every morning and pack a nice bowl full of tobacco and sit around and listen to all these amazing people. And I had sold these pipes called Becker and Musico at the Calabash, right? So my first week in Rome, I walked into the shop and met this young pipe maker, and I had a reggae shirt on, and he knew it as I walked in the door. And I didn't notice the name on the door because there was no name, there was no signage. It was just this beautiful pipe store, canes, you know, nice chess sets, and there's no name. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I used to work at a cigar shop and pipe shop." He said, "What pipes did you sell?" I said, "Peterson, Savinelli, Becker and Musico." He said, "Becker and Musico? I
I
am
am
Massimo Musico."
Really?
I said, "Really?" I said, "Nice to meet you." And from there, we became best friends. And he was a huge reggae fan. So we sort of connected. And he used to take me to his pipe shop, where three blocks down from the Trevi Fountain was the pipe factory, little boutique factory where they used to make the pipes. So we used to hang out there all the time. Long story short, he ended up forming a collective in Italy. He didn't export a lot to the United States. He formed a collective of different local pipe makers called Foundation by Massimo Musico.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I called Massimo up and I said, we always had talked about actually doing a pipe project and distributing his pipes in the States. And I said, "Massimo, Foundation is not registered in the States." I said, "I'm starting up a company. I would love to use Foundation for cigars. If that's not cool with you, no problem. I want you to register it anyway, so at least, you know, no one else can touch it and you have it." And he said, "Listen, I am the pipe maker. You are the cigar maker. It would be my honor for you to call your company Foundation Cigar Company." So
That's a great story.
yeah. So that was the
those philosophical underpinnings of the term foundation, particularly in the reggae culture.
yeah.
So how has that translate into actual structural operational practices of the foundation company? How does that, me as a customer or a consumer, how does that come through to me? How do I feel that and understand it?
Well, it's because everything we do is we're operating from the cornerstone of passion and love for the industry. And I think that's, we started with just two people. Dave and I started the first.
Dave Sather.
Dave Sather, the VP of Sales. It was just him and I the first year in our team in Nicaragua. And, originally I was going to get a lot of investors to come into the company and start things off at a much, larger level. And I said, for me, I'd rather work for somebody because I don't like debt. And I wanted to do it on my own and really not have to answer to anybody, so I could at least get it going and prove that I, could do this now and start my own brand. So
Did you think having those layers of complexity or investors would be a filter between this concept of foundation, that it would be?
no, not necessarily. No,
blockage?
it was more of a valuation. Starting pre-valuation. I understand investors at that
So it
point.
was more of a financial. That was more
Because
of a
it
financial
was all
decision.
hypothetical at this. I mean, it was all projections, and which is great, but it's not reality. So, for me, I wanted to start off and do it myself and prove that I could do this by myself. But now at this point, I really just. I'm just happy to be able to be in control of the creativity and the.
But how much does the philosophy of foundation? Do you feel like you're in a better position to ensure that because you are a owner operator and don't have a host of investors?
Yeah.
Right. So there's less of a filter.
Right.
But so then how do I, as a customer or a consumer,
Yeah.
how do I recognize those foundation concepts? Where does it come through in either the way that you operate as a company, or the way you communicate with customers, or the finished product itself? What makes you different in that regard?
So I mean, it definitely comes through the brands, of course, and for me the blends, which is for me the foundation of the cigar is well-aged, fermented, and cared for tobacco, and that's where the passion comes from, is for the leaf.
Okay.
That's where my experience for the past 15 years has been, working intimately with the leaf on the fermentation, the sorting, selecting. So I just grew a great love for this leaf, and I think that comes through in the products. And you can see through the products is all the products have a very strong. They gear towards culture, history. For me to be able to finally use the box as a canvas to express things that I really love, which is history, culture, and then also balance that and complement the blend with things that I love, is, I think, felt through the products.
To me, when
I hope that
one of your
answers your
first,
question.
it does. Thank you. One of the first products to hit the market from the foundation company is the Wise Man, or
And
many people, find the story behind this to be a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it does talk a lot about, what you learned in your years in Nicaragua. It's an opportunity, as you said, a canvas for you to share a story, a very famous folktale, what that means to the culture of Nicaragua, and to try to bring consumers of cigars to have a greater level of appreciation for the culture that people hold so dear, that actually make this product. I think it'd be interesting if you talked a little bit about how you discovered this folktale, and how you feel about it, and why you went in this direction with a finished product.
So, I arrived to Nicaragua in March of 2003, and I'm living in this place that I really didn't understand except for its cigars. In 2003, there weren't many cigars from Nicaragua on the market.
No,
Can you remember what Hoy de Nicaragua?
that was about it, really.
Mi Cubano, I think.
Esteli was far from what it is today in terms of being a real epicenter for tremendous
Yeah.
production of beautiful cigars. It just
Right.
really was at the very early stages.
Very early. It's amazing how far it's come. So I remember I had been traveling around the world the year before I went to Nicaragua. I moved my life to this place that became, when you work in a foreign place, as you know, it's different than working, say in your hometown, because you're still a representative of that company off hours, So it's
24/7.
24/7. So this imagery I started seeing back then. This imagery is really everywhere in Nicaragua. It really represents the heart and soul of the culture, but the imagery is almost like the Statue of Liberty for us here in the United States. And as I dove into the culture of Nicaragua, all I knew was Sandinista, Ira and Contra, and here you have this dance that is still celebrated today every January. Since the late 1500s, this dance has been going on, and it's recognized by UNESCO as being a heritage cultural treasure of the world. Huehuense, the GUs, this is a word indigenous to Nicaragua. So even if you speak Spanish, it's a difficult word. It's Nahuatl, they call it, which is in Nicaragua means the land of lakes and volcanoes in Nahuatl. Huehuense means the wise man. So this is the dance of the wise man who's being called before the Spanish governor of the time, late 1500s, and he's being blamed for all the problems that Nicaragua has. And the governor has banned dance or any art, things of that nature. And the Huehuense uses satire to make the Spanish governor look like an idiot. Right. And by the end of the story, he's convinced one of his sons says he's rich, the other one's saying he's poor. He convinces his son to marry the Spanish governor's daughter at the end. But it's an interesting critique on what was going on, when the Spanish came to Nicaragua.
Still has tremendous relevance today in our own
It does.
society.
Yeah. Tremendous.
The original fake news.
And that's why people relate to it so much within the Nicaraguan culture. So I knew for my first blend debuting in the market, I wanted to do a cigar that was all Nicaraguan. I really wanted to express to connoisseurs, throughout the world and in the market, really what this place has meant to me. Obviously,
Representative of your experience there,
correct.
how you fell in love with the culture.
And there was nothing else to represent that for me than Huehuense. Obviously, I knew the word would be very difficult for people to pronounce, but for me, it was more of a passion project, being the first project also, that people needed to know this word. Whether they can pronounce it or not, it has an allure, and for me, it's a very important word, understanding
It's an
Nicaragua.
opportunity to educate and to teach. And
Yeah.
bring
Yeah.
people closer to the knowledge and the experience that you had. That's
Yeah.
part of the concept of foundation and sharing with that.
Correct.
So we come to Charter Oak. For me, very interesting product because it's, to me, again, now this is closer to the state of Connecticut where we both have lived a large part of our life. And the story of the Charter Oak, but then also the product itself. How did this come to be and what, I don't want to assume what was in your heart or what was in your mind when you developed it.
So this is great because you, more than anybody, you can understand this whole concept of Charter Oak. I started smoking. My grandfather was smoking Topstone Extra Oscuro. There were so many factories here in Connecticut. I grew up learning about the history of cigar culture in Connecticut.
In large part, it's the history of Connecticut.
It's one of the coolest things about Connecticut, right? This Connecticut Valley, where we're in the heart of it right here, has just produced some of the greatest tobaccos and still does in the world. And even the history with Cuba before 59, a lot of the Connecticut cigars use Cuban fillers,
Right.
Connecticut
Havana clear
wrappers.
cigars.
Yeah. If you actually look at a lot of the Cuban cigars these days, the lighter wrapper, in the 90s they did a lot of hybridizations with, people won't talk about this too much, but with the Connecticut shade seed. And you can
Grown in Cuba, though.
Grown in Cuba, yeah. And you could see that because they do a lot of shade growing. In order to get the thin silky wrapper leaf that you need.
No veins or very
No
kind of-
veins, clean. I mean, it's very difficult to grow wrapper. It's got to be flawless. So in order to do that, the tents, which was developed here in Connecticut River Valley, so growing the tobacco under shaded cheesecloth tents, it basically creates this microclimate. Humidity is 10% higher
'Cause
under
it's
the shade.
retained inside the-
Correct. To grow this very thin, silk-like. That actually came from, sorry to jump all around, but Indonesia is where the seed originated for Connecticut shade. That came from Indonesia to Connecticut in the late 1800s. In Indonesia, you had so much cover of the fields because of the jungle. So you had
Natural-
fields,
natural
and then you
cover.
had the, right. So the seed was already a thinner type variety. And then when they brought it here to Connecticut, especially at that time, you know, late
It
1800s.
wouldn't thrive unless it was grown with some sort-
Under-
either
correct.
natural or artificial coverage.
Correct. So, again, this valley is so highly respected amongst tobacco men and women throughout the world and connoisseurs. So, this history has always been important. I always wanted to do something in tribute to all of those factories and brands that existed in Connecticut. You know, they still do. Chris Topper still makes cigars here, and but a lot of the brands have sort of faded out. You know, at the end of the '90s.
Or they're made in other places. And
Yeah. So you had Judge's Cave from F.D. Graves. So they were all in tribute to a lot of places in Connecticut. So I wanted to make a cigar that was a cigar at great value. More of that because Connecticut cigars were always great cigars, but phenomenal priced cigar. And you can-
Everyday price cigar.
yeah,
Always
you can
was.
cut your lawn and you can do things, you know, outside and not, you know, when I'm doing things, it's tough to focus on a cigar. So, you know, I'll grab a Charter Oak, you know, when you're doing something like that because it's a great cigar, great price. So I wanted to do something in tribute, pay homage, and a lot of these brands are from Foundation. They're really paying homage to things that in my life
Part of the
that are very
foundation of your
yeah.
life. That's the link, I
Yeah.
think.
Not to be
So
too
this
cliche.
product comes in 2 wrappers.
2 wrappers.
Right. Now
Yep.
the wrappers are grown here in Connecticut.
So the broadleaf Maduro is grown here, not too far from where we're at right now. The Connecticut shade is actually grown in Ecuador. So in the late 80s, early 90s, the Connecticut shade seed was brought to Ecuador. And since that time, they've become very successful growing it. Why? Cloud cover. So instead of having to build all of these tents, you know, imagine hundreds of acres.
Most of them you only get one season use out of it because you can't reuse the materials. And
Very labor intensive. The clouds in Ecuador, it's very this unusual cloud cover. I don't know cloud classifications that well, but it's very gray. It's a very thinner layer of clouds, and it just filters the light perfectly to make this golden brown Connecticut shade leaf. So unfortunately here in the valley, a lot of that is the shade has gone down in production, but broadleaf is actually the exact opposite. So
now, broadleaf is a tobacco that, at least in premium cigars, it's a more recent phenomenon in terms of how its popularity has really increased.
yeah,
And which brings us to the Tabernacle. And again, I'm very interested in the story behind the image, because this is a representation of your, artistic creation.
Yeah.
Before we even get to the cigar, but
yeah.
how has your life journey brought you to this point and to create this product, this image?
You ready to get right down into it?
Let's do it.
So
I'm not here for the coffee, I can tell you that.
this imagery, the word foundation, right? Really, the root of it goes back to the building of Solomon's temple. That's really what it comes down to. What was Solomon's temple? Solomon's temple held the tabernacle. The tabernacle was the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant. Very mysterious object. We don't know much about it. The Bible talks about it, and then it disappears. When I started in the cigar industry, I started listening, like I said, to a lot of reggae music. Reggae music, the colors are red, gold, and green. People think that comes from Jamaica. It's really Ethiopia. So all I know about Ethiopia is starvation and, things of this nature. This is about the same time I started working at the Calabash, right? So I start looking into this more. Well, it turns out that Ethiopia is one of the oldest untouched lineages of kings and queens that goes back 3,000 years to the time of the Queen of Sheba. The story is that the Queen of Sheba went to seek Solomon's knowledge in Israel, right? They had a son named Menelik, which means the son of the wise men. He was sent back to govern the land of his mother, and it's said that he took the Ark of the Covenant with him. The Ethiopians have claimed to have the actual Ark of the Covenant. Smithsonian did a great article on, it's called Keepers of the Ark. But there's something interesting that's going on here, because every church, we're talking about one of the oldest Christian and Jewish societies in the world. Mm-hmm. And everybody has this Ark of the Covenant, replica within the church. So this always, being a history and culture, this is amazing. And of course, Indiana Jones talks all about this, but they're based in Egypt in it. But if you go down the Nile and keep going, you end up at the largest tributary of the Nile River is the Blue Nile in Ethiopia. So it is said that it was smuggled, the Ark, from Egypt down the Nile into Ethiopia. So for me, cigar smoking has always been this sort of, my humidor has always been like the transportable, my Ark of the Covenant. Not to be sacrilegious, but a very special thing for me. For me, cigar smoking was always this special time between my grandfather and my brother, and just a really special time, and almost for me a sacred time to enjoy
and visit and
share. I learned a lot about life at a very young age from smoking cigars with my grandfather, and being around people that have lived life a little bit more than me, and I was able to learn from a lot of these life experiences. So I've always loved this imagery. This imagery. This is an old photo from 1924 of Haile Selassie, right? He was given the name Haile Selassie. He was born with the name Rastafari, okay, which a lot of people don't know. But this imagery, the garb, he was crowned king in 1930, but just, it's just this whole world that I never knew about, that, most of the world doesn't know about. If you talk to our grandparents, my grandparents knew who Haile Selassie, knew this imagery. But after 1974, the communists took over, and they started systematically destroying a lot of this history. And then that's when the famines took place. That's when you have We Are the World. And still this day, you mention the word, people are like, people are like, what is this guy talking about? He's, everybody, but here's 3,000 years. Actually, the most untouched lineage of kings and queens in history that we have, that goes back, so many years. I wouldn't say I'm very, I don't necessarily have a particular religion myself, I say, because I see a commonality. For me, it's, again, how you live your life. Mm-hmm. But in the first book of the Bible, whether you want to read it scientifically or spiritually, it describes the Garden of Eden as having 4 rivers: Tigris, Euphrates, Gihon, and Fihon. Gihon flew through the land of Ethiopia, some Bibles say. Some Bibles say Cush. Ethiopia is Greek, Cush is Hebrew. They both mean the same thing: those who have been darkened by the sun. They have the first bones from Ethiopia, right? Yep. Now through and now through our mitochondrial DNA, through your mother's DNA, everybody's mitochondrial mother's lineage, they're able to trace everyone. Indian tribes, African tribes, European, Chinese, to one female in this land. which I just think is awesome.
It's incredible.
But yeah, but this is you know. So I thought it would look great on a beautiful Havana seed grown in Connecticut.
It's all, yeah, it's again, it's part of your homage to the things in your life
Yeah.
that are the foundation of your life. And this product gives you an ability to share that philosophy and that story and what's important to you. And that's how I think one of the things that makes you unique is the connection that you have with consumers.
Yeah.
You know, you actually, people are very engaged. I've been to a number of your events, and it's not just, it's a nice cigar and I enjoy it. They like to share in your, the spirit and what makes you unique and different. And that also translates into the product. All these products, to my palate are unique and different. And the one that I'm really, really excited about, and I know it's not on the market quite yet, but you've worked with a group here to develop essentially what's a completely unique seed variety
Yeah.
grown here in Connecticut. This product was talked about and previewed at the recent IPCPR, and everyone is anxious to have this in their stores. Probably not maybe till hopefully before the end of the year,
Hopefully before Thanksgiving.
or even before Thanksgiving. But a lot of people, there's a misconception. I think we all just work with some basic seed varieties, the standard Connecticut shade or Corojo or Criollo. But how did this seed variety come about, and what makes it different? Because the term Connecticut is attached to the seed variety, so it either already conjures up in people's mind either a broadleaf variety or a shade variety. So the story behind its creation and what makes it unique.
So, a lot of seed varieties end up becoming used generally because they become resistant in the field to certain diseases, right? So here in Connecticut, you have the experiment station that actually houses a lot of the seeds for all crops here in Connecticut.
Okay.
And they work with farmers to develop these seeds and make them stronger with the interest of all, the whole state to keep disease down and whatnot. So the Cuban seed came to the valley from what I read from UConn's archives. They have an extensive archive on tobacco growing, right?
Originally was an agricultural school. That's what
Interesting,
University
I didn't know
of Connecticut.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Because I tapped into their databases and it was amazing what you could find. The seed, they don't know exactly who brought the seed to Connecticut they know it came between 1860 and 1870, the Cuban seed from Cuba. They don't know exactly where in Cuba, and they don't know who. But this seed started to become very popular in the late 1800s. So you had a lot of different varieties and crossings going on, right, between the same seeds. You had a few different seed varieties.
When you say crossings, is that mean like cross pollination?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Just again to hybridize seeds, and then the experiment station was starting to. A lot of the seed was susceptible to root rot. Okay, so
Black shank.
And black shank, right? So they started to develop better seeds, which eventually evolved into 142.
So the crop that will eventually be seen in this product here.
Yeah.
When was it actually grown in the fields here in
This was
Connecticut?
purchased from the fall. This was harvested in fall of 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where has the tobacco been since 2014?
Nicaragua in fermentation piles.
So after they harvest it, do
Yeah.
they do any stripping or fermentation here before they ship it? What
Basically,
stage?
They strip it from the stalk, and then it's put into about 30-pound bundles.
So these bales are then transported to Nicaragua.
Yeah, so shipped down in refrigerator containers, and sent to Nicaragua, and then the selection process starts.
That must be a very expensive process that people don't quite understand. That when stuff is grown right in country, right, it goes from the field, can literally go to the factory and age. But in this case here, it's harvested in the United States.
Yeah, And then shipped.
then shipped an expensive, smaller 30-pound package is a lot more expensive, right, per pound than 100. Then it's refrigerated and then shipped all the way to Nicaragua. Then it's
Correct.
unloaded and brought up to aging barns in Esteli.
No, in Esteli, it goes to the sorting and selecting tables. So what we need to start doing is taking out and separating based on texture.
Not color.
Not
Texture.
color, not at this point.
Okay.
At this point, it's all texture. Because then they go into 7,000, 8,000 pound fermentation piles.
Pilones?
Pilones, right? Basically, we're looking at almost a controlled composting, you know, what we're doing, very controlled. So what makes this seed so difficult, and this is, if you ask any tobacco guys, you know, the guys that are working in fermentation and, you know, sorting, selecting, selling, probably, in my opinion, having worked with a lot of different tobaccos, the most difficult tobacco to ferment. Broadleaf's difficult. This is even more difficult. Why? It's so thin, the leaf, compared to broadleaf. Broadleaf, you have a bigger vein structure, central vein structure.
So it's hardier
bigger.
and it can stand up to
It can
the
stand up
the
to
heat,
those
right?
fermentation piles. Yeah.
The
Great.
pressure and the heat.
Exactly, exactly. This Cuban seed, very thin, but tremendous amount of oil on it. So it doesn't have that cellular wall structure of like the thickness of broadleaf a lot of time, but it has all of these essential oil. That's what makes it so great and unique.
Do you then try to ferment it in smaller pilones because of the gentility of
Problem with the
leaf?
smaller pilones is we can't get the heat up to where we need it, but we can't get it too high because that becomes problematic. Because if you get it too high, there's a window when it's ready. It's about that big compared to other tobaccos. If you go before that window, it's not going to burn right. Taste is not going to be right. If you go after it, the cellular walls have all been broken down and it will literally disintegrate in your hands. And that window can happen very quickly. You don't know when that window is. You have a sense of when it is, but you don't know exactly when it is. You have to listen to the tobacco. You have to know the tobacco well. This process is going on for, 3 years in order to get it, to a palatable state, combustible to where it needs to be. And imagine if you're not careful, after 3 years, you could lose it all in one day if you're not watching it. So
You had told me once before about this tobacco that it was somewhere between a Rosado and a Maduro in terms of its color, right, to the eye.
Yeah.
So is it natural to assume that somewhere in between there is the key to the flavor, if I was trying to imagine what the cigar might taste like? What's unique about the flavor?
the flavor is you get this sweetness from the valley. That's what broadleaf is really, this earthiness, but it's this spice. That Cuban spice comes through it, which is, I think, very unique.
That's a very interesting
Yeah,
combination.
yeah. It's got almost like a cedary, woody spiciness to it, but you're still getting, some of that sweetness and some of that earthiness from the valley.
Many times people confuse spicy
Yeah.
with harsh. That's
Yeah, no,
not the case here, though, right?
No, and not harsh at all. And if you see with a lot of, being a cigar smoker and just consumer myself, that's the key for me when I'm blending is not to have body flavor and not to have that harshness, not to have anything that jades your palate. That's what. So it's definitely a fuller bodied blend, but it's not harsh at all.
So when you use the term spice, how would someone imagine? Is it more like the flavor you get from pepper, where that's a spicy,
Yeah.
and it stimulates your taste buds, but it's not, I wouldn't ever describe it as being harsh.
Correct. It's like a nice tom yum soup with
Okay.
a little bit, but medium.
Just
You know,
enough
just
so that
enough.
it awakens, right?
Yeah, it awakens
taste.
your taste buds and your senses.
Anything unique about the aroma? Because that's such a I think, spoken part about the cigar experience is the actual aroma that you get while you're smoking a cigar. It enhances, and many times it's just another layer of flavor experience when you're enjoying the cigar.
Well, and that's the, when smoking, we talk about the retrohaling, and where you're going to get more of that spice is through the retrohale, right? Aroma is crucial, because especially being, looking at tobacco and fermentation and the different stages, aroma is one of the main senses that's necessary in order to, people say, how do you know tobacco? What do the best tobacco guys do? They observe and they listen to what the tobacco is saying. Because once you start thinking, it never reacts the same way, I think it has a really nice earthy aroma to it. I get some of that sweetness and a little bit of that cedar, woody kind of smell to it. So I think it's one of those that I rarely meet people that are not cigar smokers that don't enjoy the smell of cigars.
It brings back so many fond
brings
memories,
back-
particularly
yeah.
for people who grew up and had the opportunity to spend time with uncles and aunts or grandparents. It does conjure up a lot of fond memories.
Especially really good cigars.
Absolutely. Now, how, in terms of the taste experience, will the Havana Seed Tabernacle compare to the original broadleaf blend? If I was trying to explain to a friend of mine, where it would fit in the range of flavors and tastes and experience, how would you position it? How would you describe it?
They're definitely in the same body and strength profile. The Tabernacle, I feel, has more of that natural sweetness, earthiness, and you're not, again, getting that spice. And again, the spice is definitely the unique thing about the Cuban seed. You're going to have a lot of similarities. I think the difficult part becomes is the fight over which one you like better.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the fight for people, is which one they're going to want to smoke.
One thing I've noticed as an observer of your work here, whether it's the Charter Oak Maduro, whether it's the original Tabernacle, you've gotten recently some really rave reviews on the Wise Man Maduro. I mean, off the chart type of reviews from a lot of the industry standard publications like Cigar Aficionado. And now this Havana Seed, which to me, again, to the eye, it's somewhere between, like you said, a Maduro and a Rosado. Are these things that are they just strongly influenced by your own flavor preferences? Is there something that, just subliminally, when you come to creating a blend, it's like a chef, they just naturally have certain prejudices, whether they forwardly recognize it or not, because these products all, sometimes to the eye they look similar, but the taste they're all very unique.
Yeah.
But there is just something going on there that I think,
They're
whether you know it or not, that we see.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely blends that I need to love. Coming from the cigar shop early on, you're trying to find things that people like. Just because I might like something doesn't mean that somebody might like it at the same time. I'm not here to, if someone enjoys something, how can you tell them that they're not enjoying it? So I've been able to early on, really see the different flavor profiles and myself develop appreciations for different flavor profiles. We have the Highclere Castle, that's a lighter blend, but that's something I smoke. So they're definitely blends that I need to really love, but that's really the deciding factor when I'm smoking and deciding on the blend, not getting into maybe the finer nuances and does it have this in it, but overall, was this something that really captured me? Did I really enjoy it? Did it make my mouth water? Did it make me want to smoke another one? Would I buy another one? Right. That's what it comes down to. Would I buy this product?
But it seems like you also search for a unique point to each of these brands.
Yeah.
Whether it's just unique in your experience with the art, or with the tobacco, or with the finished product. There's a unique
So
point to
I've
each of
developed
these.
over the years a certain blending style.
What's unique about it, Nicholas?
I I personally observe different patterns and how things work together.
Okay.
So it's not, again, something that's all the time. You know, it's not just a set formula per se, but I've noticed different patterns within the blending style of things that work for me. I don't talk about them too much because I don't give out my secrets. But over the years of just becoming so intimate with these tobaccos, working with them, you know, a lot of people, how do I become a blender? I want to learn about tobacco. And I said, listen, you know, you got to move down to the Dominican, Honduras, Nicaragua, and work with tobacco day in and day out. That's really the only way. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that and learn from all of these Cuban, you know, and Nicaraguan cigar masters, and you know, really pick up a lot of you know, great things that people have taught me over the years. And
What's the one thing they all share in common? They may have different methodologies, but is there an overriding?
not to sound cliche, but it is the passion, Tommy. You know, it is.
Yeah.
You have certain people, you know, they have a passion and love for the leaf. You know,
Listen, that's an overused term, right?
Yeah.
But if you've lived with them and worked with these people, right? So you see firsthand the sacrifices that they make.
yeah.
And so they don't have to tell you that it's passion. Is that what made you connected to them when you saw what people were willing to sacrifice in their lives to bring a product to the market that they loved and wanted to share?
Definitely, definitely. Learning and also seeing, you know, from one of the first articles that got me into really wanting to become a cigar maker was '96, Tom Selleck, cigar aficionado. There was a story about Rolando Reyes in the back, and it described the chickens on the way to the, and the whole, and that experience, and he was up all night, and it was learning, not learning, reviewing the cigars from that day's production.
They said it would physically inspect every cigar that was made that day.
Yeah, yeah, and he would, and he, you know, he loved it, and so then to, you know, move and really see the behind the scenes, more of the non-romantic things, and then really understand what it took, you know, to do this and do it right. That just made me want to become a cigar maker even more. But
Do you feel it's a way that you're able to speak to the world about what's important to you, whether it's through
most definitely.
spirituality, the art, the actual mechanics of growing tobacco, and fermenting and blending, and each one of these steps you've tried to put your, to my opinion, your fingerprint on it as a way of expressing yourself and what's important,
Most definitely.
and sharing that with others, whether it's or just a simple pleasure having a cigar, or trying to go further and learn about things you've learned in your travels and in your life.
Yeah.
And this has been a vehicle for you to share it with people.
Most definitely. It's the medium.
Well, I know our company and myself personally, we're all blessed and better for having had the chance to work with you all these years. And I'm very grateful that you've been able to find the time to want to share it with our friends and family and our customers, Nicholas. And maybe if you got a little bit of time, we could maybe go out to one of the tobacco barns of the field and see a little bit firsthand about some of the aspects of bringing this product from God's earth actually right to our humidor.
There's nothing more that I would love to do than do that. That's where I love to be. I appreciate you guys. It's we go back a long way, so it's an honor to be working with you.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Truly.
Cheers, brother.
Appreciate you.
God bless.
Yep.